users of covers and cozies, ready-made soles in plastic bags, negligible generalities.
Mr. Trilling, would you identify Mr. Montserrat with that definition of a Philistine?
Well, in this particular instance, yes, I think I would. I think the book is shocking. I'm glad that it's shocking. I think we need a lot of shocking books. I don't think we need to be shocked, but it's absurd to call it debased. It's anything but that. It's
the critics,
ridiculous.
as Mr. Nabokov knows, have said a great many things about this book. I'd like to see if he agrees with them. I'll quote some of them to you. One critic called it a satire on sex, a mirror of human frailties. Another said that it was a joke on our national cant about youth. A third that it was a cutting expose of chronic American adolescence and shabby materialism. Is this so? Is this what you were intending?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, first of all, I don't wish to touch hearts, and I don't even want to affect minds very much. What I want to produce is really that little sob in the spine of the artist reader. Well, I leave the field of ideas to Dr. Schweitzer and to Dr. Zhivago. And when you say satire, you imply a purpose, an object, an awakening, apart from and beyond the dream of the book. I have invented in America, my America, and just as fantastic as any inventor's America.
But you're more attractive.
Well, I think that you have noticed, but some reviewers have not noticed how helpless and how lovely she is. And well, it was fun to breed her in my own laboratory. But I'm not concerned in holding up public abuses to ridicule or that kind of thing.
But there is an underlying tone of satire to the book.
But now if you give to satire its initial, its original sense of Macédoine, of fruit salad, satira, then perhaps my dish is good enough for that purpose.
But you say that your book isn't meant to produce emotions in readers. I'd like to ask Mr. Trilling, as we move over here, if it didn't produce some emotion in him.
Oh, yes, it did indeed. I found it a deeply moving book. Mr. Nabokov may not have meant to move hearts, but he moved mine. He may not have meant to affect minds, but he did affect my mind. And I think I found it a most
more than just a tingle at the end of your spine, as Mr. Nabokov said.
Yes, it was, we can't trust a creative writer to say what he has done. He can say what he meant to do, and even then we don't have to believe him. No, I was deeply moved by the book. I think it's one of the most moving books I've read in a long time.
But Mr. Nabokov is also saying, as I gather, that he has no message at all in this book.
Well, I don't feel I have any special message, and if you ask me, for instance, whether my own ideas are those
of Humbert, the main character in the book.
No, I would say no. Of course, he's a European and a man of letters, as I am, but I've been very careful. I've taken great care to separate myself from him. For instance, the good reader notices that Humbert confuses, just to take an instance, hummingbirds with hawk mouths. Now, I would never do that, being an entomologist.
You're an expert in butterflies.
I am to a certain extent, and I never do that. Well, there are many other things, many other matters which I leave to him.
Well, there, I think nobody would suppose that the author and the hero would in any way identify.
It has been supposed. It has been supposed.
Well, Humbert, besides several odd tastes, also hates American motels. He despises them.
Yes.
Have you this feeling?
Yes. No, well, I must say there are some absolutely delightful motels where I've been very happy with Humbert writing the book, but which I could not use because the book is slanted in a different way.
You would see a motel as something rather grotesque.
Not necessarily. A motel can be anything.
But let's get down to the really intriguing point, Mr. Nabokov. What gave you the idea for Lolita, the story of a middle-aged man and a 12-year-old girl and their love affair?
Yes.
How did you start it?
Well, in a little afterpiece which I have to my book, I talk about a certain ape who was taught to use charcoal and to sketch the and the first thing that the poor little animal did was to sketch the bars of its own cage, you see.
Is this an analogy?
Yes, I read that story in a newspaper, and if I try to rationalize the impact of that image, I would say that my baboon, Humbert, because after all, Humbert is a baboon of genius perhaps, but a baboon, is doing exactly that, you see. He's drawing and shading and erasing and redrawing the bars of his cage. The bars between him and what he terms the human herd.
And this cage, I take it, is this obsessive and rather frightening love.
It is
for this girl.
Yes, it is his passion, the pattern of his passion.
But let's get down to the more specific point. Why did you choose this rather odd and something that's never been done before, this curious and debased love?
Well, I think because, on the whole, it afforded me all kinds of interesting possibilities. I'm not so much interested in the philosophy of the book as I am in weaving the thing in a certain way, in those intergradations and interweavings of certain themes and sub-themes. For instance, this thematic line of Mr. Quilty, whom Humbert will kill, and does kill, and whom Humbert mentions as early as page 33. And so on. And he appears several times throughout the book. Putting him into the book.
But you must have read in a newspaper or been aware of this strange sexual symbolism or this oddity in a minority of humans which has shocked so many people about Lolita.
I have read a considerable number of case histories. I would say that I became quite an expert in those matters. I have not combined them for the purpose of writing the book, but they have influenced me in one way or another, just giving me certain information.
Mr. Trilling has a very intriguing theory about Lolita. He thinks it's a return to the old kind of romantic, shocking love, but I'll let him explain it, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, Mr. Burton, it isn't quite to be dignified by calling it a theory, but my reading of the book led me to feel that despite the judgments that a good many people have made on it as a book about sex and sexual obsession, that although it is indeed a very erotic book, a very sexual book, if you wish, it is not a book so much about an aberration as about an actual love, and a love that makes all the terrible demands that almost any love makes, certainly that any sexual love makes, but that is very full of tenderness and very full of compassion as well as passion. And it occurred to me to say that this particular love that Mr. Nabokov had chosen as the love object of his hero, a young girl, someone who is usually preserved from the sexual attentions of men, a very young girl of 12, as I recall, because he wanted to reconstitute that the shocking nature, the scandalous nature that once used to characterize the famous love affairs, the love affairs of great stories.
That love should be scandalous and is no longer scandalous? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't think that love should be scandalous. I'm a very respectable man. I think that all the great love stories have been scandalous. For example, they have been adulterous. There have been stories not of love between married people, but between people who ought not be in love.
Let me interrupt you here and let Mr. Nabokov have his say here.
Yes, well, it seems to me that all worthwhile novels, after all, are concerned with passion, love, and apart from Humberts and the Nymphids, there does exist, has always existed in novels, as well as in life. If you take a novel, well, take Anna Karenina, Tolstoy's Anna Karenina with Kitty and Lovin, which have a relationship, you see, also in ordinary life in Europe and America, which may be termed passionate love, glamorous love, within the terms of normal marriage. So we have that too.
Yes, we do, but that is not the
thing. They don't make
that,
books, isn't that your point?
It's not called Kitty, and it's not called Levin, it's called Anna Karenina.
I'm not sure that I think that Kitty and Levin are just as alive as Anna is, and the rather, well, dummy-like Vronsky.
Yes, but it seems, but it seems to be that all great love affairs are tragic. They all end in death, as yours does. And
well, I will put it this way: that if sex, you see, is the servant maid of art, love is the lady of that tower.
What Mr. Trilling is saying, I think, is your book is about love and not about sex. Do I interpret?
And I agree with him perfectly in that.
But a great many people who are shocked by this book think it is a book about sex, right?
Oh, yes. And because it is destructive, and because it is because the love is destructive or cruel or many other things, it is no less love. In fact, that is why it is love. Love is often is these things very often.
That's because they think in cliches. For them, sex is something so well defined. There's a kind of gap between it and love. They don't know what love is, perhaps, and perhaps they don't know what sex is either.
Has sex become a literary cliche so that people can't recognize anything else?
I'll say yes.
Will you say yes?
And well, I have to agree with you.
Let me ask you one fast question before we close, Mr. Nabokov. You put a word in the language, nymphet. Is this going to be your monument? Do you feel that you've accomplished something?
It is a very small monument, but it is a delicate monument, and it is pleasant to have that somewhere in the garden, in the shade.
It is a word that is cropping up. You must see this word starting out at you.
I see it constantly. I see it constantly. It is a pleasant feeling.
There'll be nymphet clothes very soon.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Trilling, Mr. Nabokov, talking about Lolita.